Our next speaker is Nancy Byers. She's going to be talking to us today about how to heal with sound, and she'll be doing some demos too. Please help me welcome Nancy Byers.
Thank you. Especially, it is on, but it's going directly into the video camera back there. If you have I know, they warned me. If you have a problem hearing, be sure to just speak up. Go, Nance, can't hear. No problem at this end. Thank you especially for coming out on such a beautiful day. I'm only sorry that we can't open the ceiling and enjoy some of this while we're doing sound. I'm here to talk a little bit about how I got into what I'm doing, called the language of light, and then to give a demonstration to you. And from there, we'll see about quick time for questions to be answered and anything else. If you have particular questions, I'll be happy to stay after a little bit too and meet with you. I don't have a booth set up this time just because I'm doing a juggling act this weekend with family. So if you'd like to talk later, I'd be happy to contact you by phone as well. So this journey started for me about 18 years ago now. I'm trained as a traditional marriage and family therapist, and I was in practice working and ready, though, for something new. I was ready to expand, and I asked the universe very intentionally, hey, I'm ready for whatever's next. And then I added this little addendum, and if I could use my voice, I would really love that. But in those days, I honestly thought maybe that meant I could sing Dionne Warwick songs to my kids. If any of you know Dionne Warwick from way back, does that date us a little bit? I thought maybe I could loosen up and sing to my kids, but lo and behold, 3 nights later, I was asleep and awakened in this, for lack of other words for it, I awakened in this bubble of light, just vibrating like a purring cat. And I've always been envious of cats in the first place because they can just, you know how happy they are right off the bat. And I was lying in bed doing that, just, and it continued several nights in a row. And during the daytime, I would walk along and feel energy moving internally. And in those days, I didn't have words for what was happening. It continued more or less for 3 weeks, and I ended up contacting a counselor who I had used through a divorce period several years before that. Called her up and said, hey, I have some really strange things going on I'd like to talk to you about. So I came in, we talked, and while I was describing what was happening at night, spontaneously the experience started right there in her office, where I just looked at her and I said, I can't talk right now, I just need to be still. And I sat there and went through this just very blissful place. Well, it still is, I honor her in every talk I give. Her name is Betty Schneider. But bless her heart, she was a very traditionally trained marriage and family counselor as well. And she ended up being the gatekeeper for the next 3 years of my process, which meant that we both tossed out our traditional textbooks and said, hey, we're just going to go with this. And she said, I kept saying, how can you do this? Because it got so strange over time. And she said, well, I know you, and I know it's not crazy because I know your stuff. And I know it's about love because I can feel it. And she said, and I know it's about growth. And that's what my work is about. So I'm here for the process. So pretty soon the energy got so strong that I had to I couldn't sit up holding it. I needed to lie down and surrender to it, which we did. We disassembled her couch. I lay on the floor. And for any of you who have been in counseling, you know that that is not the traditional scene. Hi, come on in, lie down with me. Usually that doesn't fly these days or any days. Anyway, I look back on that period of 3 years as a real development and preparation of my physical body for what, even at that time, I had no idea would eventually develop into. And in fact, I didn't know about anything called the language of light. I just knew something really profound was happening and that I was willing to follow it because there was so much love in it. I just wish I could. Many of you probably have already experienced that, but for me it was just like, oh my gosh, we don't need war, we don't need drugs, we don't need anything if we can tap into this. And if it was happening to me, I knew it could happen for all of us. So, at the 3-year mark, sound started. I had understood in the silence of the process at one point to bring a tape recorder, so I did. And that particular time, I had an experience where it was as if, I'll just use this for, it was as if in my language center, someone had taken a stick or a stirrer of some sort and gone like this. It felt like my language center was very scrambled. And when I sat up after that particular session, English was not the first language I accessed. In those days, I called it gibberish. But there was this compelling need to make these sounds that were very foreign to me. And I'm married to an electrical engineer. So you can imagine, I'm coming home from these sessions and going, guess what? Today I was lying there and the sound came out of my mouth and then I was going, and I look up at him and he's, just this glazed look like, oh dear. So that was a rather difficult period for us because I was so excited about what was happening and the feelings and anxious to know what it was developing into. And for him, it was a very scary period. For those of you who have partners who have dealt with the same thing, he thought I was, who knows where I was headed with this. At any rate, the next session when I lay down and we uttered a hymn that we always sang together. If any of you know it, it's called Open My Eyes That I May See. It's a beautiful lead-in to a spiritual space. And as I started that, it was like jumper cables had been hooked up. It was like the culmination of these 3 years brought us to, and lying there out of my mouth, breathing in, breathing out, it didn't matter. All these sounds and, again, I called it gibberish, but I was lifted into this place of such beauty. And then every subsequent session after that, as soon as I would start that hymn and as soon as I would open up, that would start. Now you would think, like, yay, yippee, finally there's some result and we know it's moving in the direction of sound, which is what I had originally asked. Except that actually it really opened up a dark night of the soul for me personally, my left brain, Nancy, the traditional counselor, because at that point I felt like the butt of a cosmic joke. In that, you've got to be kidding. This isn't even English. And I kept thinking about my clients, and I had hoped that in some way I could use this with my counseling clients to help break up patterns and reorganize energy. But instead, I found myself in a position where I couldn't do it sitting up, first of all. I had to lie down, and that brought me back to my clients, hi, come on in and lie down with me. And I knew that couldn't work ethically. But over the next 2 years, it was another 2 years, I still wasn't using it in my work at all, but for 2 years there was another preparation period, which was, I would be let's say I'd be in a session with a couple, and they'd be talking to me about what was going on, and I would see these pictures in my mind's eye of this energy that was their problem, this energy of thought patterns. And I could see how sound coming out of my mouth, the vibrations of that, could very quickly break up and reorganize the energy, reharmonize the energy. But as I say, it was another 2 years before I started using it in my work. I'd be in places like Albertsons, in grocery store line, and let's say the 5 of you in the front row here next to me in line, and I'd be drawn to one of you, and I'd look around out of politeness, but in my mind's eye, I'd see a movie. And I'd see you, and I'd see sound traveling to you, and again I could see how very quickly sound could break up and reorganize energy. Now if you think about it, in our everyday lives that's true. If we wake up and we're kind of in a funk, we're just kind of, but we turn on the radio and our very favorite song happens to be on, we can't help but somehow be energized by that. Our energy can change. And just like that, we can turn on and have our least favorite kind of music and go, So the preparation that I was having during those 2 years was to help me see how sound can break up and can reharmonize very quickly. And that is pretty much the basis of what my work is. At 8 months into it, a friend called and I was invited to go to someone's house where Swami was in town from India. And I was anxious to go, met the guy, really liked him, and went several nights in a row. And then he invited us the next session before he was going back to India to bring questions. So I did. I brought a tape. I couldn't do it publicly yet. I didn't feel comfortable enough, but I brought a tape and I asked for help and I said, this happens every time I'm quiet. I'm in this blissful state with this. What is it? Have you ever heard of this? So he listened to the tape very kindly and moved along to the rhythm of that particular set, and afterwards said, yes, this particular set of sounds is called the Tal experience. And the tantric yogis use that particular set of sounds going up their chakras to attune to their light bodies. And it was Sanskrit, not gibberish, and that if this was happening in this spontaneous way, to allow myself to just surrender and give thanks. And that was the first time in almost 4 years that I'd had any left brain validation to hang on to, and I just went. So after that, there was a real deepening, and not long after that, I was able to actually start the work with people through a friend who was doing soul writings for friends, and she invited me to just come to her space, not as a traditional counselor, just come to my space, and the people I work with will know that they're signing up for my soul writings and artwork, hers, and then for Sound with You. So it was a perfect entree into it. So over the next several years, that's what happened. The work developed. I learned a lot about it just working with different people. I noticed that often the sounds were very different from person to person to person. I can give you an example. Different people, the person would sit up afterwards and go, how interesting. I've been studying the Quran, and a lot of what you said are words I recognize for the Quran. Or just as common would be someone, Native American, Indian, person would be able to say, well, hey, you were actually telling me something that I already understand. But of course, I could never validate. I was just the little vessel for this sound current. So, I ended up, I'm fast forwarding so I can get to the demo. I ended up at a sound intensive in Colorado. And Jonathan Goldman, who's the head of the Healing Sounds Association, asked me to do it for the group. I did. By now I was able to stand up instead of lie down. Over time I adjusted to the energy and could finally stand. So with his group, after doing it, a gentleman walked up to me and said, do you know what you're saying while you're doing it? Which is a very common question. And my common answer is no. But I did feel and do feel always two things. One is that it's about love, because that's the only feeling I've ever felt doing it. Secondly, that it is about remembering. Literally, remembering something we all already know that is so deep within us. It is so beyond our left brain's way of processing information that, in fact, that is why it is not in English. The vibrations held in these words, as you'll see, are different than our standard speaking language. So after that intensive, the gentleman said, just a minute, and he went off in a corner, and he said, I'll be right back, and he came back, and he brought this piece of paper, which I'll send around, and he said, I'm a linguist, and I understood a lot of what you said. The set that you delivered was Persian, and he said, on the left, I wrote the phrases in Persian, and on the right, I translated them, and he said, you'll be interested in the two at the bottom in view of what you've told me. The next to the last word is memory, and the last word is actually a phrase which says remember, as in a command. So literally, you're being told remember at some level. Another example I can give you is that, again, with Jonathan Goldman, he and his fiancée were getting married, and they asked me to do a sound blessing for them ahead of time. I did that, and their rabbi was present. Now, I don't speak Hebrew, right, in my conscious world, but the rabbi was there, and as I was doing the sounds, he was translating what was being said. But again, I have no clue. You know, I catch this wave and off we go. As far as how it's used, in my practice now, of course, I'm still a trained marriage and family counselor. So I combine what I do as a counselor, helping people align their intentions with their deepest heart's desire. And then what I can do in assisting is to help that come into being through the use of sound. So my joy is getting to deliver the language of light in addition to doing what I did before in a combined way. And I'll be happy to talk about that later. Are there any questions so far?
Well, you're saying light and sound. Are you going to the frequency of light or just staying strictly with sound?
Now here we go. You're getting very specific. See, you're getting real specific. These are the things where this is perfect, because years ago, questions like that would have just really rattled me. I would have gone, oh, I don't know. I don't have the answers to these things. I don't know the difference between this, that, and the other. And my left brain would just be going. Whereas now, it's like, you know, I came about this whole journey through this internal process. And my part is to deliver it. If someone else wants to answer that, I call it the language of light, because that's what came to me at the time to call it. If there's a literal scientific, and of course that's the electrical engineering husband I have too, where I'll use a phrase like vibration, and he'll bring me a book this thick on vibration and go, be careful of the words you use, you know, and I'm going, I don't know what else to call it. So you could probably tell me afterwards, you know. I'm glad you're saying that. Actually, that does bring up an important point. When I was giving you the grocery store example of being called to somebody, what I would experience in this picture was, if you picture, I saw stone tablets with symbols on them at the time. And one of those stone tablets would be pulled off the shelf, placed in my heart, just like a tape or a CD player. Then I would feel very specific calibration take place, like a radio station, like tuning in to your frequency, say. And when it was right on yours, then I'd take off on this thing. And you'll see, I'll give you a demonstration of the differences from person to person. Now it is so effortless for me, I almost forget that that was part of the process back then. But for years, it was kind of the trigger for me as to, okay, here we go. Does that make sense? Okay, so yeah.
He said it's a different channel. He was seeing the people made of jade with an alligator head. Oh, that's why they did all these pictograms and pictograms. They were seeing stuff that they thought were the gods, you know, so it's still a mystery.
Yeah, I mean, the word mystery is key here. What I had to do eventually in order to do this at all and to step out of my comfort zone was to just be willing to hang out in the mystery. Because when I started, at first when I was in front of audiences, I went to England and traveled from city to city for a while, and I felt like I had to have it packaged, you know, like I have to know, because people, and as a counselor I know a lot, but with this I didn't. So I got to the point where I thought I had to package it. I would start to say something that I thought I knew about it, and as I'd be in the middle of it, I would feel this very distinct thing on my left shoulder, like this tapping thing, like 1, 2, 3 thing. Like, it's okay to play with words, but the minute we give a label to something, the minute we do that, we've once removed ourselves from the actual experiencing of it. So what I invite you to do today, despite the fact that your left brain will probably be going, what is she saying? And I'm trying to understand because I think this might be important for me. Let go of all that. Sound penetrates. Sound will go right in. This is an activation for us as a group, for some of you individually, and if you're willing, I hold a group intention that which is needed by all of us come to us and through us, through the greatest heart of all, the great mystery, through our hearts, and then offered to all other hearts ready to receive at this time, and always and only from the highest place of love. Does that work? If there's anything you'd like to add individually for yourself, by all means do. Oh, this does move. Okay. How far can I go with it? Oh. Okay, well, at some point we won't need the mic. I'll just set it down. But I'll do the first part up here for us. Okay, how are we doing? Oh, God, we're almost done. Okay, here we go. We don't have much time, but I can do some out there if you want. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Biragrim biriyagrim shakrim biriyagrim horamakrim biriyagrim horam. Barasharagrim biriyagrim horamakrim horamatirata. Birasharagrim biriyagrim horamakrim horap. Dirash borokrum biriyagrim horam. Biragrim biriyagrim horabagrim biriyagrim hoshak. 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 Iragrim biriyagata boroshurum horum hara. Biragrim biriyagrim horamakrim biriyadat. Biragrim biriyagrim kurush. Biragrim biriyagrim horamakrim metirata drum horamosh. Baratata, boratata, boratata. Biragrim biriyagrim horamagrim biriyagrim shiram. Aram, orum, haram, horam haram. Biragrim biriyagrim hura, birim biriyagrim hushakrim biriyagabatiram. Biragrim biriyagrim hukakirm hashakaram. Biragrim biriyagrim horamagrim biriyagrim 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 biriyagrim. Birashiragrim birata, burukurum baratandarata. Iragrim biriyagrim hurabakrim hushakrim haram. Biragrim biriyagrim hurabakrim haram. Haram, haram. Binda kirada ireram hodam. Yenda kiragirma haram hodam. Yemba kiranda shirairayam. Yenda kirayaram hod. Yaram hod. Yadam hod. I'll just sit down. So you can see the difference. And anybody who likes it, I'll do Any of us in particular want to, and can I meet? Okay, so those who want to, if you have a few minutes after, I'll meet you out there because I can't hold up the, I can't hold up the group. I'll be happy to stand up there. How much time do I have? 3 minutes. Okay, actually, then I'm going to wait and we'll do it outside. I want you to have the opportunity to ask questions, feedback, discomfort, comfort, anything that's going on for you during the process. But not all at once. Yes, sir.
How did you see your parent came to this membership into your body? Where did that come from? You said it just appeared all of a sudden?
It was actually not all of a sudden. It was years of development. In fact, there are cards with my website on it that tells the story. It tells the story how, and it has a sample of the CD that I have doing this. It's singing and some speaking. But that would be a good way to read the story. If you missed part of that, it'll tell you how I do. Where are your cards? Part of my card? Do you have my card?
They're out of this chair.
Could you please pass them out for anybody? And there was not a handout. Pardon? There was not a handout. Well, I have plenty of handouts. So
when people receive this, the sound information that you gave, is there, do they experience something? Do they feel something?
Yes, the most common response, I actually call it a sonic massage. The most common response in private sessions, I'm actually touching from behind and it's going directly into your ears. So it's a sonic massage, but the most common response is relaxation. But often people spontaneously come into their own expression sound. Also, an autistic girl who had no way of communicating for 24 or 26 years, when doing this was with her, after she learned to communicate on a computer, on a whatever you call it, board, keyboard. Thank you. Keyboard. When asked, what do you think this is? She immediately, without hesitating, we're all looking at it, says, this is to remind us that we're spirit. Oh, I'm so sorry we don't have enough time. There's so many things I can tell you about the effects on people with neurological disorders and working with a group of kids in wheelchairs. And it's a common language. It is our next step in language. Thank you. So thank you. Oh, time. You don't have.
Do you speak to animals differently?
Animals. I work with animals. Yes, different languages with animals. And trees. I do it in sight. I was in a cave once and did it. I did it in a cave in outside of Santa Fe. Yeah, outside of Santa Fe, Jemez Springs. And in doing it there, when I started the sounds really fast, the rock rained. Rain, poured rain, like sopping wet rain. It's a whole. Too bad we don't have enough time. But I'll be out here for a little bit. Thank you so much.